Hey, good afternoon. It's Richard, and here's another episode of RJA Garage. Today we're going to work on a vintage American car, a 1962 Studebaker, and we're going to do the shocks on the front and the back. We're going to start with the front shocks. Most American cars, especially of this era, come with the same setup. They're coil suspension systems with shock absorbers. Technically, the shock absorbers just dampen the ride. They do not actually hold the wheels onto the car. Is your tool setup? It's a good idea when you're working on a project. You set up a little table and you get out what tools you think you're going to need, check your sizes, and it won't be perfect every time, but it's a really good idea to do this and save yourself a lot of trips to the toolbox. So there's several points. There's actually only 3 bolts that hold a set of shocks on the front of an old vintage car like this. We have the top bolt right up top, which is the top of the shock. And then we have 2 bolts right under here, which hold the bottom of the shock absorber. So I like to squirt a little penetrating oil on the nuts and bolts that I'm going to be removing. You know, some of these cars are pretty old and rusty and crusty, and a little bit just goes a long way. You don't need a lot. It will penetrate. You can leave it sit for 15-20 minutes if you like. It just depends on how bad it is. This I've already had off, so I know it's going to come right off for us. Now we're going to use our 3/8 ratchet with a 1/2-inch socket and a long extension. Now some of these bolts that are on the suspension systems are press fit in. So when you remove the nut from the bolt, it might pop up a little bit on you, and all you really need to do is stick your finger up and hold it down. It will go back into place without any problems. It's a real good idea too to organize your tools and your nuts and bolts and your parts as you take them off your car, kind of keep them together. And that way you don't get confused. I mean, this isn't very complicated, but there are a lot of projects that will have a lot of parts to them, and it'll be a real good idea to keep it all together and keep it organized. And there we go. The bottom is done, and we'll move over to the top. Okay. Here's the top part of the shock absorber. I've lowered the car down a little bit to make it a little more comfortable to reach it. This nut is a 3/16 nut right here. I'm going to use a gear wrench to do it. There's lots of ways, a lot of preferences, but you can always, whatever you choose, but we just try to give you best practices here. Now this shaft that this nut is connected to will turn inside the shock, so you're going to have to put a little wrench on the top to hold it in place while you loosen the nut. You know, a good rule of thumb as you're working on cars, which is something that took me a long time to figure out, is because I was always a very fast and get it done type of person. But when you're working on cars, slow is fast, because if you go slow and you do it right the first time, then you won't be doing it over again. So that's pretty close to being off. And we will get a hold of the bottom of the shock so it doesn't fall off. If it does, it's not the end of the world, but that's okay. Not quite there yet. Yeah, I think that got it now. And we take it out. Take it completely out. And you'll have a cap, metal cap there, and you'll have a rubber bushing, which is collapsed, as you can see. It's pretty nasty. And that's why we're changing these things in the first place, is because these bushings have collapsed. All right, so now we have our old one. Obviously, it's an old Midas, obviously not original equipment. And then here's the new one, which we purchased from Napa. And it's a really good idea to compare. You look at your parts, your old part versus your new part. Make sure that the manufacturer sent you the right part and it lines up. You know, you look at the bottom, you look at the tops, look at the length. And if it all matches up, you should be good to go to put the new one back on. All right, we're gonna take off the new hardware, which usually comes in a little plastic bag, and we've got the old grommet, the new grommet, and what you will do here is you will slide this up through the coil spring, paying attention to where it goes up through, because there's a hole at the top of the that you need to thread into. Because if you don't go through that hole and you miss it, you're going to be doing it over again. Then there's a new rubber grommet, and you put it on top with the aluminum cap and a nut to hold it in place until you get the bottom started. Okay. Now what we're going to do from here is we're going to raise the car up to where we can get under the back under the car to do the bottom of the shock. Okay, up where we need to be. I'm going to give you guys a quick look at the bottom of it. Okay, there it is. It's got the bolts between the two slots of the shock absorber where it mounts onto the frame of the car. And we're going to add our bolts. All right, so we're about ready to finish up this front shock on this 1962 Studebaker Hawk. Well, we've got the two nuts to put on the bolts that hold the bottom of the shock together. Of course, we want to start these guys by hand. It's real easy to get these cross-threaded. They're just kind of an odd angle, so you just really want to make sure that you get these things started by hand. That way you don't have a problem when you put the wrench to it. There's one, and number two, I've got it hand tight. Good place to be. We're going to use a 1/2-inch wrench to finish it off. And again, there's bushings in here, so you don't need to get this extremely tight. You know, less a lot of times in the world of automobile mechanics is more. You don't need to tighten everything to an extreme. All right. Now we're going to move up to the top, and we're going to look at the third nut and adjust it properly so the bushing will have just a slight bulge in it. All right, here we are at the top of shock. We have a bushing, a steel cap in a nut, which holds the top of the shock absorber into place. You want to take it and you want to get it hand tight to start off with. And we will support, again, we'll need our little bitty wrench here so that it won't, turn on us while we're tightening it up. We want to get a slight bulge in the bushing. We don't want to overdo it again. And that looks pretty close. You really don't need to overdo these. We'll take a little closer look. We'll take a little closer look here. And yeah, see if you can see the bulge and the bushing up there. So that's really it. Now your final wrap up in all projects on automobiles is you go back and you tighten and you check every single nut and bolt and anything you've touched to make sure everything's tight, you didn't forget anything, and that way it's just a good safety check. You definitely don't want to go running down the road with a loose shock on your car. So that pretty much wraps up the front side of this front shocks. All right, we're back to our 1962 Studebaker Hawk, and we're going to do the rear shocks. The first thing we're going to do, as we did before, is put some penetrating oil on the hard door. We're going to root it. Here we go. And this stuff is not going to be real easy to get on video, so I apologize for that. These bolts and nuts are in a really curious position, as you'll find out as you do more of this type of work. You'll also find out it varies from vehicle to vehicle. You'll find spacers in some places and not in others, and it's just kind of the nature of the beast, especially with the the older cars, the older vintage cars. Again, we're gonna go with our tool setup before we get started, figure out what wrenches and sockets and tools we're gonna need. In this case, we're using 11/16 wrench and a socket, as well as 5/8 wrench and sockets. And it's good to have a soft hammer around in case you need to pound out a bolt. You don't want to ruin the thread, so you don't want to go with anything real hard on your hammer. So as you can see here, there's the shock we're going to get to. We've got an upper bolt and nut, we've got a lower bolt and nut. I've also secured the lower axle housing with a piece of lumber just to keep it from expanding down as the car's up in the air without the shock absorber on. It won't fall off, but it could, definitely give you some problems when you try to put the replacement shock back on. As we continue to do this, you'll see as we go. Okay, with our 11/16 wrench and socket, we're going to start up high, because you always do the hard one first of all, because then the easy one is, because the first one, it's hard, is going to wear you out, and then the easy ones just get easier. So we're going to start up top. Again, this is not going to be easy for you guys to see, but we'll do the best we can. So we're just going to ratchet this guy out of here and to sharp edges. Never a good idea. I think I've got pretty much loose enough to get out of here at this point. By the fingers. All right. So as you can see, this one again has the self-tightening nut on it. It's got the little slots on the top of the crown. So when you put it back on, those slots have to be up or away from the tightening area. So it'll tighten up and hold for you. I'm going to leave the bolt in until I get the bottom one out. And that way it won't just fall down on me while I'm working on it. Alrighty, here we are on the bottom of the shock here. We've got a 5/8 on one side and 11/16 on the other. Don't ask me why, but go ahead and remove this bottom bolt and nut. should be close enough to get the rest of it away by hand. Yep. Alrighty. Now we're ready to remove the bolt so we can drop the shock down. In the back, it comes out pretty easy. And that's exactly why you support the upper axle housing, so you don't have car weight on the shock while you're trying to remove the bolts. Get the top one. Again, not the easiest thing to get to, but it's just part of the job. Now we've got the old one out. All right, and we've got our old one here, and here's our new one. Again, we're going to do a comparison on both ends, the length, the size, everything about the old versus the new, and make sure they match up so that you don't have the wrong part. You know, it's happened many times. Manufacturers ship wrong parts. It's not that unusual. All right, we're ready to put this sucker back in. One of the things you might want to check is the diameter of the hole may not be exact from the original equipment. See, this one goes through. Make sure you do both sides, because there has been times that I have discovered that the diameter of the hole is too big or too small, and that's a bad thing when you're working on suspension. So we're going back up in here. We're gonna get the top end of the shock started. Get it hanging there for us, nice and pretty. And the secondary one, I've already tested this, but so you can see it fits. And then we're gonna slide that into place. This particular shock had a spacer, so when you put it back together, make sure the spacer's on there. You'll obviously see the bolt is way too long. Make sure that we've got the right side of the nut up, one with the slots, right? Got the slots here, so it's got to go up, away from the tightening up. And get it started by hand. Get the upper started by hand. Yeah, it's a good idea to get these on as far as they go by hand. That way you less wrenching. It helps. All right. Get this back up here. Make sure you got your ratchet going in the right direction. That'll not make the day very happy, especially if it's a nice long bolt. All right, here we go. We got that one tightened up. Now we're going to do the bottom one here. Again, these vary in size, so you just kind of have to pay attention. And you've got bushings in here, so you don't have to over tighten this. Just get a nice little snug bulge on it. It is not designed to be tightened beyond it's just not the way it is. So we've got it back on. Now we're going to remove the support on the axle housing, and I will do that Just basically with a quick hit of the hammer. All right. And as you can see, no stress on any of the brake lines or piping of any sort. Everything's in place, and you've now replaced your rear shock in a 1962 Studebaker. All right, now that we've checked everything out, make sure all our bolts and nuts are tight and in place and there's no unnecessary stress on the rear axle and the shocks. Everything's in place and looks great.